Hey, what's going on? Today we're going to cover Kayangel gates 1 through 3 in the solo mode. It's going to cover the normal patterns of each of the gates first, and then we're going to follow up with the HP bar mechs that are based and always guaranteed to happen, as well as be sure to check out the description and comments for the usual items and engraving support buffs that I like to use for all of my solo raids. Going in, he's always going to do a slam that's actually kind of a grab with the swing up front if he doesn't get you, but it's going to just knock you back and forth in front of him if it does get you. And throughout all of this, you're going to want to be on the lookout for an eye above your character's head and just take that right out of the little square or to the outermost part as soon as you can before the debuff above your MP bar reaches 0. If his sword goes above his head and he has this blue shield kind of around him, just don't hit him, wait until he's done and does a slash forward before you go into DPS. Or on the other case, if he has it in front of him and swinging around, go in and stagger and then get your DPS off. But keep an eye out because the moment he moves, you want to get out of the way as he does a twirl that will knock you up and can knock you off the field if you're near the edge. He will randomly jump up in the air and jump off his shields a couple of times, and after the X55 mech, this can be up to 3 times before he slams back down, whereas beforehand it's just once. He also likes to throw his swords out in a boomerang fashion, kind of like so, twice before he slams forward and then an AoE kind of appears around him. Just be sure to jump in the middle as he does that little slam. So if he does some fancy swordplay real quick and then does 2 jabs forward, it's followed up by a super hard jab where this will grab you, and if he succeeds in grabbing you, he'll slam you back and forth in front of him on the floor a couple of times. When he does this little hua sound and kind of starts sounding like he's charging up, and his sword is bigger than it usually is, just watch out as he'll teleport behind you and do a single slash. After X55, this does actually become 3 slashes instead of 1, so just plan accordingly. He'll do this little kickback and slam down forward, and after 55, this also has a bigger guy that comes and does 3 slam downs in a triangle shape in front of him. If you recently used a counter, but he shows that little blue counterable state, just go ahead and get out of the way as he does this little huge blade around that thing that, especially during solo, without having a support to shield you through, it'll probably kill you unless you're just super overgeared. You can also use a time stop to sit there and not take damage. If you're not sure, you'll get out of the way in time. He will rise up in the sky, drop down swords all over the field. Just make sure to dodge all of these swords. Even after he drops down and is able to be DPS, some of the swords will still show on the field. Just avoid those as well. Another normal pattern he likes to do is he'll slam forward with an AoE explosion that happens around him. So just jump inside after it clears, as well as a little Pac-Man with a small area for you to be safe from. If this happens while you're near the edge, it will knock you out of the ring and make you have to reset the gate. He can also do this little pizza pattern with a little bit of area for you to be safe from. Just keep an eye out for that. One of his only actual mechanics that's going to happen at X50 bars is he's going to jump up into the air and start pulling you down towards the bottom of the screen with a little target that'll show up above your head, as well as lightning pillars that will come from the top of the screen to the bottom. So just keep an eye out. When the target disappears, go ahead and just get out of the way, either by just walking calmly or spacebarring out for that extra bit of dramatics like I like to do. No worries though, since this is solo mode, if you get knocked into by either one of the lances or the electric pillars gets you and drags you down into the bottom, you actually have this little buff that happens only in solo mode called Unbreakable Mind. So for one time throughout your raid, you're given the chance to continue living through something that would have actually one-shot killed you in a normal instance. So no pressure on completely doing this perfectly if it's your first time doing so. Now you may be wondering why I mention all of the normal patterns. Well, that's because after stage break, any of the actual normal patterns from earlier can knock you out of the ring if you are not careful. Hopping in first, she's going to be using her air ball for almost everything in this raid. One of the big things she likes to do is have an area around her that is not safe to stand in, but the area right in front of her is safe, or she's going to drag the ball to another area and have the area where she's at safe while the rest of the stage is not. And last but not least, have just an area around her that you gotta completely avoid. If you're ranged, then you can still DPS through, otherwise melee, just try not to get hurt too much in this. She'll randomly do an X mark, just be sure to avoid. She will also have an area around her where she lifts up gravity and such, but you can still DPS if you wait until after she lifts up, and it'll just slam down and do some damage to you. She likes to summon 4 clones of herself and 1 real. The tell for this is going to be 1, the sound, and 2, you can look for the ball that is slightly bigger than the others, or 3, just look for the one spot that has more of a storm kind of AoE look to it than the others. One mech that has its own internal cooldown is going to be her summoning orbs of elemental properties. These are going to shoot out their own little projectiles to go knock out the other orb. Normal cases is just to let the projectile go over and clear out the other orb. But if you accidentally eat the projectile, you do need to destroy the orb of the one that's not going to be broke. This will guarantee a normal pattern with an elemental effect that might give you stacks, so here's just a couple of those. Here we are with the grass one, it's just going to have some star-shaped lines coming out. Next up is going to be the nature as well. This one is just going to have like a little Pokeball lineup effect around. Avoid these as each drop will give you a nature stack if you're hit, followed up by a counter in front of her. Some of the water elemental ones is she's going to have 2 lines that follow you. Each hit will give you an elemental stack, as well as the next one is an area that will drop around you as followed by a counter at the end. Last but not least, a couple of the fire ones. It's just random drops of fire being placed throughout the map, followed up by a counter at the very end to keep her from dropping it all over the map. First mech is going to be at 62 bars. She's going to go mid and summon huge elemental orbs in a Y-shaped formation. You're going to want to start at the bottom and rotate counterclockwise. If you're not able to get in the spot in time or something and you just missed that first orb, no worries. With solo mode, we have the unbreakable mind buff, so you can actually live through one major mechanic at least once. Just start up at that second orb and keep rotating counterclockwise, and then wait for that little tell beneath her feet showing the element to know which one you're going to want to destroy. And just for science sake, I tried out to see what would happen with the unbreakable mind with also destroying the wrong orb, but as we know now, it will just completely take your HP down and let you continue living once in each gate. If you do the mech properly, you're going to rotate clockwise twice and check the element underneath her. As mentioned earlier, think of Pokemon, fire beats grass, grass beats water, and water beats fire. So for the Spacebar mech, you're going to want to keep your Spacebar gauge almost completely full because the black AoE is the one that you want to be free from the Spacebar gauge. And you never know which of the 4 it's going to be, but it is guaranteed to happen in one of the 4 times. Next up is going to be counters and stagger, and this mech will happen at 42 bars. And the last mech is going to be this one right here. It's going to summon 2 rings with orbs on each of them. So for the grass one, I destroyed the fire, and for the fire ring, I destroyed the water orbs. Nothing to note here other than, as I mentioned, just think of Pokemon of which element is stronger than the other, and the rings are not guaranteed to always be the same, as well as if you stand on the ring after finishing the mech, it will give you that debuff of that element and knock you up, but really it's not too big of a deal since the main mech is already finished at this point. Going into gate 3, he's always going to do a jump forward with a slash, followed by a little circular area that will knock you up if you're standing in it. After that, he'll do about one more attack before he just goes ahead and disappears, only to reappear somewhere with a shield in between you and him. If you're Hitmaster, you can DPS through this. If you're back attack or front attack, don't get too close as it will drop your HP down to that 1%. One major difference in solo mode is that whenever he does a slash and drops a line for you to take to the outer edge, it's actually an X mark rather than just a line like in the normal raids. After the 135 mech, you do want to have it ingrained in you to take it to the outer edge because it will do the explosions follow up closer into towards the middle. One of his favorite things to do throughout the raid is he'll do a step back with a slash, and this slash continuously blows up in explosions throughout the whole arena. Another one of his favorite normal patterns is he will throw an orb forward and have lines pulled out from there in kind of a star-shaped fashion. Before 135, it's just a single line, but after 135, it's actually a double line. Another version of this is he'll throw the light forward and it actually becomes a circle around him, whereas after 135, it's a circle with another circle around that, leaving a small sliver of space for you to go in and DPS through this. He also likes to create a little diamond area around him where you can attack from the front and back safely, but not exactly from the sides, so just dodge accordingly. At times he may jump up in the air and have the line aggroed on you to kind of follow. Just be careful along the outer edge, as you will get a suppression that'll slow down your move speed and attack speed as well. If his sword randomly turns into a hammer and you see a blue AoE around him, go ahead and dodge those lines as it'll suck you in the middle, and then also watch out for the huge AoEs. After each second explosion of the red lines, your feet will drop one of the gold orbs around. For solo mode, this only happens once, but in the normal modes and such, it happens twice. He will also fly up in the air and start bringing out lances that are basically flying through the air. As you can see, these will, after X135, light up the lights if you're looking to re-up on that light energy. Just watch out for the red lines and stand right outside the inner ring, the outer ring of the first one, and jump in after it explodes to avoid getting knocked up. If his sword turns into a scythe and he starts swinging it behind and around him, just go ahead and get out of the way, as he's going to shoot out 4 other scythes that will aggro towards you automatically. If any of these hit you, you will be bound in spot until this is over, which at that case he pulls you in and will keep you in spot and do some damage to your character. At times he will choose to drop a little AoE following with you at first, as well as other spots. Each of these will give a suppression debuff as well as make your character slow down for both attack and move speed. As for the first major mechanic, so at 180 lines he's going to jump up into the air and drop little slashes at your feet, as well as a huge arena that it changes each time for what the pattern's going to be. Just avoid those. Then he does this little power up to show that now is going to be the time. If you want to DPS him, you're going to have to rely on the light energy. So it's going to aggro onto you, and just bring him over to the edge and try to hit it with the shield. It's no worries though if you don't manage to hit it first. You can aggro him to shoot the laser onto the egg at another location. And even if this doesn't work, any of his attacks from now on will also light up any of the eggs from further on into the fight. If you do not have the light energy buff, you will not be doing any DPS to him throughout this fight though, so it is recommended to keep an eye on the timer on the bar to make sure that your buff uptime for this is always on point. At 135 mech, he's going to go mid and have shields spawn around with lasers shooting out. Since it's solo mode, there's going to be 3 NPCs that'll spawn randomly, and your job is going to be the last person shooting the laser towards him. So just let them spawn up, go to where they're going to go, and wait till it's at that very last point and make sure you're focusing on towards him. Try not to be too close to any of the shields AoE ring around them whenever doing this, as this will bind you, lock you out, and keep you from completing the mech, which will cause you to have to restart. Next up at 108, he's gonna rise up in the middle, and it's gonna show that the only safe spot at first is there in the middle, followed by 2 white lights shining from 2 spots on the floor, and black and white orbs spawning all over the place. For this mech, you're going to want to get 5 of the white orbs. Try to avoid the black orbs if you can remember where they were, as this will stun your character and keep you from moving for a couple of seconds. And you do have time to get up to 5 orbs between the 2. Just make sure to not try to be eating orbs when you should be getting under the pillar for the big AoE burning of the stage, basically, that he's doing here with the sun. And if you're wondering, how am I supposed to know where the pillar is going to come? No worries. If you remember where those white lights shot up earlier before when it was showing the colors of the orbs, this will actually tell you the position to look out for and get ready to be under for the pillars whenever he's doing his big AoE burning attack. At X60, it's going to be pillars and clone mech, so all you have to do is look for one of the clones that has a pillar with letters in front of it like so, and then go over and stagger it. In the normal mode, you need to ping for other people, but with solo, it's just you. It's all you, so just go and stagger that clone. Now, the biggest thing after X60 is going to be he will randomly jump up in the air, destroy everything on the map, including yourself, unless you're under a pillar. For times like these, time stops come in handy in case you're not sure about your placement on the map being good or if you'll get there in time. Otherwise, keep an eye out for the purple text and just spacebar after it disappears to be able to avoid being sucked towards him and towards the big burning AoE. You can also use moves that are push immune as long as they are also a moving push immune skill such as Bard's March and things like that, so play with your kit on your character to see what works for you. I hope that this guide is helpful to you in getting your clear as quick as possible rather than having to take as many takes to figure out the raid. If this guide has been helpful, be sure to let me know as well as leave a comment if there's anything else that you'd be interested in seeing. Hope to see you around in Arcasia, guys.